huge plots of land, and excluding others from their clubhouses, which is a stark contrast from what was supposed to be in the first place. Affordable college. Pain management for chronic pain patients. 24-hour decongestant/antihistamine cold medicine that worked. Drixoral dropped off the market when everyone switched to new decongestant formulas that were somehow more resistant to distilling into meth. Oh, and anytime I buy decongestants, my DL gets stamped. Thanks, criminals. Or maybe the result of big pharma lobbying, trying not to buy into the conspiracy. Buying tickets online. It used to be easy. Now I have to choose all the squares with a freaking car and them to prove I'm not a bot. Log in with a password I forgot. Get my password link sent to my email address. Change my password. Prove I'm not a bot again. Pick seats. Confirm seats. And pay an extra $20 for a convenience fee. Reddit. People are stupid. And they are still stupid on Reddit. I still see so much of that whole pat yourselves on the back, don't we know better than the pros. Attitude here. Like the average user is some educated techie. As if this is 2006 and Reddit is some underground site. Acting like the user base is anything more than a hive of idiots is ridiculous at this point. Reddit is currently the 15th most trafficked site in the world. That's incredible. Mainstream popularity. And it brings in everyone. People who use this site aren't smart, or interesting, or unusual for doing it. If they ever were. Getting advice from Reddit. Doubt its value. It probably comes from someone stupid. How about Reddit's opinions? Likely to be a rational groupthink with a healthy dose of corporate/foreign astrotophy. Speaking of astrotophy, the profit/influence potential of a website this popular is immense. And everyone knows it. Reddit got so upset about not being able to monetize their popularity as well as they wanted, that they pushed a terrible Reddit exclusively to pack the site full of ads, and banned various controversial groups to sanitize the site for advertisers. They are turning this site into Facebook with messaging, profiles and everything, solely to pander to those users, and bring in advertising dollars. And the sad part is it's going to work, because that's been proven to be extremely lucrative. And because the new Reddit is populated by average users who live for that format. This site is near ruined. When I first became aware of it 11 years ago it was small. Discussion was good. Most of the users were there to escape from the burgeoning popular sites which were full of mass marketing, driveled that now pervades Reddit. Because in
Hello. We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty. You should have received something in the mail about your car's extended warranty.
Yeah.
Then we have not gotten a receipt.
But interesting that gets popular and attracts the attention of interest groups and average internet users. To be fair, this complaint basically goes for the entire internet.
I can't remember how to get the fuck out of here.
And yes, I still play that glorious game. Open discussions about issues. eBay used to be this amazing multinational garage sale, filled to the brim with people selling their used stuff. Then people started filling it with garbage brand products and drop shipping it to the winning bidders. Then came the people that started using it as a storefront and charging full retail value for the items. Now eBay is nothing more than resellers that find it more affordable than developing an actual web store, leaving me scratching my head wondering why people don't just order it from Amazon for $20 less, or walk to a big box store and buy it for the same price without shipping nor a wait. I'm permanently checking the used button of the search results have been far better, but there's still people that keep the original box and try to sell it in like new condition for full retail. Surprisingly, not Wikipedia. It just seems like one of those things where vandalism should have won over the wish to have a public, well-cited, crowdsourced and relying on contributors' knowledge base. I'm very happy about this. Dark humor. Pensions. Retirement and having a career with a company for more than 10 years. Stupid boomers. Greedy corporate assholes and crappy government ruin all that for everyone. Read this in 5 years for best results. Emotional support animals. Those fun rock hiding groups on Facebook. In the beginning you paint a rock and hide it for someone to find. There were so many fun designs. Sometimes you'd find a rock from way out of state. It was thrilling. And then people started imposing new rules on the group. You can't hide rocks with glitter or stickers or googly eyes. because it might make a squirrel want to swallow one. They'd jump down the throat of anyone who posted to the group with a glittery rock. You were not allowed to hide a rock in a business, because someone might think it was solicitation. Suddenly all the fun animal-themed rocks hidden around the zoo were against the rules. And heaven help you, if you got caught. Middle-aged women can be mean. Fights began to break out over designs, claiming they were stolen from someone else. The entire thing turned into a cesspool of he said, she said, and ignorant people doing their rocks wrong. Now the groups only consist of a few people who beg others to hide rocks, because they don't know why the magic is gone. Yahoo Games. I'm not sure what ended it, but I suspect idiots were involved. A smooth experience at the airport. Used to be able to walk through a simple metal detector and that was it. Empty your pockets and you're good. Want to meet your family at the gate? That's fine. Want to walk your loved one to the plane? That's fine too. Now we basically have body cavity searches, and have to deal with rude agents who hate their jobs, and would rather be anywhere else in the world. It sucks. Back in 90s in Turkey, when you were wasted, and thought you couldn't make it back home, you call 155, police hotline, and tell them who you were and your whereabouts. They had to send a car to pick you up from where you were, and give you lift to your home, so you wouldn't be UI or get robbed. Islamists came in power and ruined everything for the rest of the country. College books. My dad spent $50 per semester and my great uncle spent $20. I've spent $500. I know inflation bumps up the price every few years, but Jesus have the arseholes in the industry been fricking us over.
Right.
People
coming
need to
in.
read the articles and be informed. Now I feel like people skip to the comments to get the gist of what was actually written/said. So whoever invented the comments section ruined reading.
Hey, watch it!
Playground equipment, the Raleigh slides,
Hold on, bro.
the merry-go-rounds, and there was even a park I used to play in as a kid that
They
had a
freeze to death, did they
retired train
burn?
car we
What
could go in.
happened?
The Raleigh slides apparently pinched too many fingers. The teeter-totters were too hard to get off of, and the merry-go-rounds were spun too fast. As for the train, I'm pretty sure there were people shooting up drugs and or homeless people sleeping in it, plus graffiti. Now it's gated off, and no fun for anyone. Decent discussion about politics. It's literally only shout-clinging, and is almost completely counterproductive.
We hear yo.
And just divides people. Being able to play games on a
Hide your
device with no
kids,
internet
hide your
access.
wife.
Law darts. Full video games. Without pay-to-play DLC. Driving. Now there's too many damn people on the road, most of whom do not need to be licensed to drive. That cannot use common sense.
Where they at? We want that action.
Follow traffic.
Where you at?
And understand that they are not the only vehicle trying to
How
get
you want your
somewhere.
bullet?
Among other
Cartoon
things,
Network.
one were
It
expert
still
traffic
hurts.
police. Watch the floor for tripwires and false plates.
Inhalers. My bestie who had asthma used to be able to get inhalers without going through the counter when he was a kid and he needed it desperately. Now they quit selling them over the counter, and you need a prescription, because
man.
probably not
Got to use his scrolls.
ended up this way. If you worked hard, you could usually live on that wage in a modest if reasonable manner. If white, anyway, says the boomer who grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Politicians took money from the
I'll
vested
take
interests
that.
and let this happen. And everybody blames the victims. The internet. Affordable health care insurance. I now pay $700 after tax monthly premium for a third-tier health care plan that I try my best not to use due to the cost
What is
co-payments.
that?
And I'm very concerned about what the coverage will cost in 2019. The Great Barrier Reef, a clean environment / planet. Herd immunity. Freaking
That
anti-vaxxers.
shit is heavy.
Minor auto accidents.
Can't
Fender
move it.
benders. When people shrugged, exchanged insurance info, and got the damage fixed. Now too many people call a personal injury attorney and try to get all the money they deserve for injuries that don't amount to anything. Wine tasting. It used to be that if you were planning a nice dinner
Somebody
or
died
picking
right
up
there.
wine for holiday meals, or for
Fuck.
whatever reason, you would go to the winery and they would suggest pairings for you. You would taste a few samples, and
It's a
then
switch,
buy the
man.
bottles you wanted. Or you would politely tell them you are going to try a different winery. The word got out that wine tasting is free, and every crap wanted to get wasted for free showed up. Nowadays every winery in California charges for tastings, and instead of having a nice experience, you have to fight yuppies and their dates. Bachelorette parties screaming and wooing, etc. for space at the bar. Movie theaters.
I don't know what to do.
Etiquette is absolutely dead. My once greatest joy is dead to me, because people are inconsiderate assholes who feel they can act like they're at home and ruin it for others. I've incorporated a projector and a screen into my man cave and never looked back. Being a photographer. Everyone seems to be a photographer, meaning if you're an Insta person or a celebrity, basically a big following, you get booked for gigs despite not knowing anything about photography. Edit. I'm not saying people need to know technical side of photography. Natural talent is brilliant. I mean crappy photos being widely praised just because of a person's following. Undertale, Minecraft, Rick and Morty, Sonic, the list goes on. Really? Arctic ice large enough to sustain polar bear populations. We used to have a small state park where I live. It was a literal hole in the ground in the middle of farm country. There was a waterfall, tons of crazy rock formations, climbing walls, as well as rare plants and trees as far as the eye can see. It was beautiful. Then stoners and hippies took over the place, spray painted on all of the rock formations, and moved any rocks and boulders that could be, to spell a big 4/20 in the faces gazing fit. Baggies and cans litter the waterfall to the point where the entire waterfall looks like a mountain of trash. You can't step 2 feet in any direction without seeing a can, bottle, pipe, or needle. It's really sad. The last time I went, my friends and I left in tears. It was devastating. Manners a lot of the time.
Stop.
People may say yes, sir, have some kind of dominance issue, and the other extreme may people who say yes, sir, are just plain fools. Skyrim, Microsoft ruined it. Airplanes used to be comfortable with good service, etc. Now we are crammed in there like sardines. Nickel and dip for every peanut you want. In Australia, there were a series of giant land lakes in the desert collectively known as the 90 lakes. Beautiful, natural diverse ecosystems, fun people activities, and genuinely wondrous. Then the Australian government sold farm upriver to water-intensive overseas cotton farms, and didn't restrict their water use. The river started flowing in reverse. The 90 lakes almost never fill anymore. Airplane flights where you could carry pocket knives from home to your destination, got real meals during the flight, and weren't treated like cattle. Fandoms. Used to be. There could be big fandoms without fights, and ships were just for fun and no one trying to harass people into making them canon. I don't care if my ship doesn't become canon. I will freaking ship it anyways. The comfort of knowing that your children were safe from polio and smallpox and measles. Because people vaccinated their kids. Because of course people vaccinated their kids because
Suppose the warmth of
guns
this
at
place
school.
comes from all the
My dad
steam
told me
vents.
that people brought their guns to school. They didn't bring them inside of course, but would leave them in their trucks and would go hunting after school. The principal would also come outside and talk to students about his gun. This was ruined by school shooters. I had 2 Sparks 360s, of limited editions and both gifts from my wife years apart. I had a good friend that was going to college and sad he did not have a Sparks. He was going to be able to buy one, but it was going to take a few months. So I lent him the one I was not paying.
I'm married a long time. I've been married so long that my oldest daughter's my age. I didn't mean to be married this long. Well, I just stuck around the last 10 years pretty much to piss him off. Who thought till death do us part was going to take this long? People ask me all the time, what's the secret to a long and happy marriage? I can tell you the secret to a long one. Children. That's the reason my husband and I are together today, is the kids. Neither of us wanted custody. childbirth. Save that anesthesia till that kid's a teenager and you're reading. My son Scooter was the sweetest child on the planet. 10 years old, we're at dinner one night and he goes, Mama, when I get married, I want to marry someone exactly like you. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw my husband go. 1 minute, Scooter's 10 years old, the sweetest child. The next thing you know, like that, he's 15 and he's cocked and attitude. We'd been fighting all day and he came over to me and he goes, so, why'd you have me? Well, actually, we didn't know it'd be you. To get married. Do you think she's anything like me? The first time I met Hiawatha, she had a safety pin, too.
Hiawatha.
I didn't even know your eyebrow could fall off. Stop it, I only have 8 minutes. Neither one of these kids are the sharpest cheese on the cracker. She thinks fiance and finance are spelled the same. He thinks God's name is Howard. Our Father who art in heaven, Howard, be thy name. It was my fault when he was growing up. I said to him, get smart.
That's funny as fuck. Did I hide it? I hit the wrong button.
Clap your hands.
Okay, my bad. Get back into this shit.
One OKF my favorite gifts from my wife due to the meaning behind it. I had to sell it, because every time I looked at it, I would get so upset. Still mad that he let his friend treat other stuff so bad. Actual conversations. There used to be an annual free garage sale near me. People would bring in boxes of things to donate. Volunteers would set them out on tables, and everyone could take what they wanted. Then a couple of people pretended to be volunteers and loaded the boxes of donations directly into their own cars. A lot was also stolen from the church that hosted the event, including the stool from their order. They no longer have the free garage sale. I belong to a small, local 24-hour gym. They used to have small white towels, hand-sized, that you could use while you worked out. There was a laundry basket you could throw them in as you were leaving. They weren't great quality. In fact, they were rather rough from being washed every day, but they were nice to wipe down your treadmill, wipe your face, etc. Last month I entered the gym, and there's a sign stating that they are no longer stocking the towels because people are stealing them. WTF. Why would anyone steal these small, scratchy towels? It's probably the gym rats who forget to put them in the basket and now have a huge collection in their trucks. Pisses me off. Good Star Wars movies. I feel like Facebook was great when it was just for college students.
I can't
And they
carry all
opened it
this
up to
shit.
everybody, and it didn't take long before it began to suck. I don't need that much access to my relatives. My Little Pony. Two of my best friends introduced me to it in college when I was in the middle of a breakdown. And it was so cute and wholesome and good, and made me feel like not everything is horrible. And then the Britney Nation attacked. VH1. They used to have great shows like Behind the Music, pop-up video and classic albums. Plus they made some really good original movies as well. Then literally overnight they turned into me, but only stupider, if that's even possible. Local television, computers, music, nature. I watched my childhood apartment pool get filled with only 4 tons of cheap sand, because people kept abusing it, and the landlords didn't want the hassle of maintaining it anymore. I'd say geek/nerd culture was a place for bullied outcasts to hang around. Then 10 years ago, said bullies jumped on the bandwagon, and brought their toxicity with them. I had this cool wooden sword that my aunt gave me. My older brother thought it was cool too, and kept talking it, and hitting stuff with it, even though our parents told him not to. About a month after I got it, he broke it. Dodgeball in school. Parents complained. No more running around the padded wrestling room and only socks in a 1-ball 3-ball. Any guard training or any scenic area that prevents you from getting a clear view of the edge. Social media was really cool for like 2 years. That might be shocking to younger readers. The word Fortnite. 2 genders. Deactivate vanilla account before I get to see the backlash. Affordable living. My hometown turned a recently vacant bus depot into a street art center. The walls were open to be painted on. You could do events there, and it was open normal park hours, dusk till dawn usually. Within the first months or so of being open, it was covered with all sorts of art. Then towards the end of the summer during the first year, some kids beat the security guard with their skateboards. Been closed since a fake. I moved away a few years ago. Anyone mention Kinder Eggs in the US? It may not be a super nice thing, but I remember how much I loved them growing up in Canada. I live in the US now, and a few years ago, when they got banned, I was incredibly upset. It was so fun when my mom would buy me a little chocolate egg with a small toy inside. The chocolate isn't bad, and it was a fun little surprise toy during a time when my mom and I didn't have them. I still buy them when I can. I may not play with the toy like I used to, but I haven't been on the toy for a long time, because it's just a little piece of hope. Pensions. Legacy costs are pension killers. Most states refused to deal with this back in the 70s, 80s and 90s, and now good people who worked hard and went into the public sector are on the verge of losing a moderately stable retirement. Take CT16. 000 pension recipients make between $40, 000, 80, 000. If those go, thousands of people will have nothing, especially on the teacher side, where they aren't allowed to collect Social Security. People used to be able to do things without being called racist, sexist, etc. These words are now being thrown around too much, without people understanding the true meaning. Basically everything that got popular, because it was good, and then too mainstream, and that ruins it. It's like once it gets enough movement, investors jump on it, and siphon every last bit of fun out of it. Plus it attracts mindless idiots who make the community more sour. Actual freedom of speech, these days. If you say anything remotely controversial, you have a pack of degenerates issuing death threats, because you used the wrong adjective. That is, if social media outlets don't ban you for using their platform first. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch the video. What was the stupidest thing someone has asked you 100% seriously? I'm a postpartum nurse. A patient asked me when will the doctor be here to pierce my nipples so I can breastfeed? The insurance company asked if there was a chance that my dad's amputated leg would grow back. While working as a butcher, I showed a deli clerk how to break down a whole chicken into pieces. I show her 2 breasts, 2 wings, 2 legs, 2 thighs. She looks at me and asks, which part does the turkey come from? Because I'm a dwarf, I get a lot of hilarious ones. But one of my favorites was, do you need to get a smaller engine for your car? I really wish I could have seen your internal process that led to that question. Lady. Someone was placing an order once at my family's restaurant, and they had asked me for a side of French fries without the potatoes. I assumed she was joking, so I laughed. She wasn't joking. She got offended and left the restaurant long. How did we know that they were called dinosaurs? I worked in a pizza restaurant when I was 16. They had a pizza they called a UFO pizza. It was just another slab of dough on top of a regular pizza, and it made it look like an order. Hence the name. One day a guy that worked there was writing down a telephone order, turns around and says, "Hey guys, how do you spell UFO?" The owner looked mortified and just repeated UFO. He stared back in silence for a few moments before it hit him. My 20-something daughter asked why we never see squirrel eggs. Us parent types responded, that's because squirrels are mammals and don't lay eggs like birds do. To which she responded, then show me an infant squirrel / breastfeeding squirrel. This led to a conversation that was much longer than needed to be. People visiting Alaska on a cruise would walk onto the dock at port rolling into the Pacific Ocean, then look up at the mountains and ask what elevation we were at. 1 foot, ma'am. You are standing on a dock which is at sea level. My current boss asked me to make the pages smaller so she can see all of them. She had Excel zoomed into 200% and thought I was just sending things in font 46. This person has been in her position for 12 years. First day working a tech support job. I answer a phone call from a woman whose laptop won't turn on. She's at the airport trying to get some work done, and is very frustrated because she had been working for several hours during the layover and the laptop suddenly shut off. I asked her if she had the laptop plugged in when it shut off, or if she was just running it on the battery. It can be plugged in. I thought it was supposed to be wireless. I honestly thought I was being pranked because I was the new guy. After a lengthy pause to decide if it was a serious problem, I advised her to try plugging it in. Laptop turned on. She was amazed that it didn't just recharge itself when she wasn't using it. Can you imagine what giraffes break? Staging other giraffes. In my driver's ed class, the instructor was discussing cardinal directions. He asked a girl on the front row what direction her house was from here. She points out the window and he goes so. Where? She responds, it's my east, because I'm facing you. Do we have the ability to open digital files? This is the guy who would print PDFs from our server then scan the print to his email, so he could save them to his desktop. Was a Mac genius for 7 years. Customer asked if her iPod would get heavier as she puts more music on it. This one guy asked me how to UN or something. Waited on a woman who asked me what kind of meat was in our beef taco salad. Lady, what kind of meat is in your beef taco salad? Me, beef. L, what kind of beef? Me, beef. Ground beef seasoned with taco seasoning. L, no. I mean, is it pork or chicken? Me, man. It's beef.
Oh.
It's a cow. It's beef.
My ass
25-year-old woman asked me if a BJ could get her pregnant. I have a buzz cut. A guy at work recently asked, dead seriously, do you cut your hair?
Oh, my audio. I'm listening to a Reddit channel. Dude just reads Reddit posts.
People in a college class. I introduce myself.
Sometimes it's pretty funny.
My mother is legally blind. New class date. Don't you mean different name that sounds a little like mine? Me? No. He thinks it's time to double down. Are you sure? Why not? Me? Because that's not what my parents named me. Like what? To correct someone on their own name. I have a somewhat unusual name. People misspell it, or mispronounce it all the time. But this was special. A full moon only happens once every 10 years. Right? A girl at school asked me if Wisconsin was the capital of Texas. She was confused. Of course she moved to TX from we. I said no, it's Austin and Wisconsin is a state, not a city. She said ooh. We were high school friends. Just how did they go? In high school, we were warming up before a baseball game one evening and some really ominous dark clouds started rolling in. One of my teammates very seriously asked, is that a storm, or is that just night coming? I will never forget that. When I was in college and my flatmate saw my room, he asked me in all seriousness, why is your toilet so clean? Do you think they're a little old to be lesbians? Working for a rafting company, I'm asked far too often at the end of the float, if we are back at the start. Rivers don't flow in goddamn circles. If it was possible to even land a plane on Japan, because it's so small, because, you know, one description of the world, / the guy ahead of me asked the chip little employee, what's Kentucky? It was lettuce. He asked what lettuce was. What day of the week is Good Friday on? Do you mean what date? No. What day of the week? It was on a Thursday last year. No. Work in retail. Guy comes in. He looks pretty average. Has a nice suit. Nice glasses. Well kept hair. Above average, I guess. He's looking for a particular stock prop that the store carries, and I bring him over to where they are kept. He begins to stare at the box. A deeply troubled look emerges slowly on his face as he places his hand on his chin. The box art depicts the pot in use, with some photoshopped water and a corn cob bobbing out of it. This is relevant. Trust me. After about 10 seconds of him staring perplexedly at the box, I ask, anything else I can help you with? He replies, sounding confused. So, this thing can only be used. I stared blankly. Was he tricking with me? His ex-demeanor told me no. He was indeed concerned about the product's potentially limited use. I honestly have no idea how long I was speechless. It felt like minutes. I couldn't speak. No one is that dumb. Right. He eventually says, it's okay. I'll figure it out from here. And continued to gaze at the box in hopes of gleaning the answers to the troubles he had encountered. Not asked, but my mom straight up said we should drive to Puerto Rico. So, that was interesting. Edit, to address the two most common comments. No, this situation has nothing to do with my username. Sorry. Second, my mom was totally serious about it, and was about to call to see how much a rental car was. People do her brain farts, people. While holding a
Glass
container
bowl's
of
still
molten
kind of
salt,
better, but
do you know if there's sodium in salt? I mean, I know there's iodine to prevent retardation, but is there sodium? Literally had a guy ask me yesterday, if I hit the cashback button, does the money come out of my account? Dude was like 30, and he thought cashback was just free money, I guess. Not asked, but in high school show choir, we took a trip to Toronto from the US for a competition. One girl thought Toronto was in Florida and only packed bathing suits, shorts, and crop tops. Not me, but our safari guide in South Africa said he once heard a woman ask her husband, "Honey, is that the same moon we see in Texas?" I'm working the help desk. Do you guys have any of those wireless internet cables? Blank stare ensued while I waited for her to understand the request. Then I said it's already plugged in. Can you name all the digits of pi? Confused. I recited a couple of numbers before trailing off. A friend beside me piped up, claiming that he could indeed name every single digit. Cue 2 minutes of him bullcrapping his way through pi, making appropriate pauses to think, or to do some quick mental math before continuing. All of this was done with the asker pointing her phone at him, convinced she'd got the next viral hit. Needless to say, holding back my laughter was extremely difficult. I live in a high-altitude town in the mountains. Every week, I hear this question: at what elevation do the deer turn into elk? Why do so many people think this? Why? If the Battle of Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle of the Vietnam War, this was a 22-year-old high school graduate. Do Jews wear that hat because they are hiding bald spots? I was working at Target when I was asked for a black highlighter. I said, "A Sharpie." She said, "No, a black highlighter to strike out mistakes." A girlfriend of a friend of mine asked, "I wonder what it was like before color." This chick thought the world was black and white, not film. Not me, but an 8th grader foreign exchange student asked our 70-something-year-old, obese, grumpy math teacher if she was pregnant. She stared at him with a look on her face that said obviously not, and you know, that you little crap, and then the kid followed up with, "Well, because you are attractive enough and everything." The whole class was silent. The teacher stared at him for a minute before turning off the overhead and gave us a short infomercial rundown on menopause, followed by "So no, I'm not pregnant." The whole time, even though she was talking to the class, she was staring at the kid while she talked about. That was an all-time record for most awkward math class in my book. Had a lady insist that the lights outside that you don't plug in and don't have batteries were not solar lights. She got furious when she asked 2 more employees who both said solar lights. She then described the solar panel on top of those decorative garden lights and demanded a manager who also told her solar lights. I dated a girl who thought butt stuff could get her pregnant by absorbing a cross. She also thought swallowing would make her pregnant. I'm an identical twin, and one time a girl asked me if we get each other confused. Not a question my cousin's friend once told her she believed in God because of Mount Rushmore. For context, I work at a phone shop. Customer, what is this? Hand me his bill. Yeah. This is your bill. Customer, but I already paid it. Me, well then, don't worry about it. Customer, no, I mean I paid it last month. Me, oh, this is just your second bill then. Customer, but I already paid it. Me, last month's bill. Yes, this is your next bill. Customer, you mean they keep sending these every month? Me, yes, that's what a phone contract is. You signed a contract for 2 years, didn't you? Customer, yeah. Me, so you will get a bill each month for 2 years then. Customer, he legit thought he would only get a single $90 bill for his brand new iPhone over the entire 2 years of his contract. The spork is the devil's utensil, because it is the amalgamation of the masculine fork and the feminine spoon, and is trying to blur gender lines in society. My daughter asked me a couple days ago if a duck is a bird. She's 13. Co-worker asked me last week, what's behind the sun? Student, over the phone, I can't come to the learning center today. Can you print me some things for me to work on at home? Me, how are you getting them if you can't come in today? Student, hangs up. My roommate asked me if Radcliffe College in Harvard was named after Daniel Radcliffe. The USA is in California, right? It's not so much what she said, but when adult me was having a conversation with my adult sister. It came about the island we grew up on. And now both of us in the big city. What I learned and appreciated from our islandly lifestyle. She had no clue what I was on about. In all her life she had never registered that we grew up on an island. Smaller than what? She's the most intelligent person I know. Very academic. But she never realized, no matter where we looked we could see water. Granted, there was a bridge to mainland. But still. Not the stupidest thing someone has asked. But when they were asked to name an inanimate object, they looked around the electronics store they were in and said, I don't know. My finger, like you. You picked the only animate object in the whole app store. I once asked someone to look to the left of something on her screen. She asked my left or your left. We were both facing the same direction. Not asked, but my sister is staying with my grandma, and her friend was renting the spare room for a while. They were both ones complaining about how much my grandma charged us for it. I asked them this huge charge was a measly $100 a month each. They're both 25. They are in for a hell of a rude awakening whenever they actually get out of the world. My 21-year-old sister once asked my entire family at dinner, if nuns don't have sex, where do they get more nuns? That takes the cake for me. What is it that black people use to keep your hair clean? Asked by a white woman who had walked into a black hair care supply store. She had her hair done in braids, and just walked up to the first black woman she saw, and asked that question. We'd all gone a bit quiet when she walked in, so everyone heard her question. The woman just sort of stared, and then said shampoo, and gestured to the wall full of different kinds of shampoo behind her. The white woman shook her head in frustration, and went to the next black woman, and asked the same question. Of course, that woman had also heard the question and answer that had just happened, and knew shampoo wasn't the right answer, so she kind of shrugged and said so. The white woman again looked exasperated, and I was the next closest black woman, so she asked me. My guess as to the right answer was, is it water? She shook her head again. By this point the woman in the adjacent hair salon had come over and just sort of snapped, black people wash their hair. You fool. Our guess, after she left, was that she had gotten her hair braided without knowing how to care for it. She probably tried washing it at one point, and was shocked at how messy it looked afterwards. White hair generally has a different texture than black hair, and so it won't hold the braid that well, especially after it gets wet. And besides, black women generally are using extensions with the braids, and the extensions hold the braid perfectly, and figured that black people must have some secret method to keep it clean, and were refusing to tell her. Is for sale one word or two, came from my boss. How did we build the mountains? My brother's fiancé, while we drove through the Rockies. Are there black people in England? People waking other people, and asking if they were sleeping. Widespread stupidity this. When I was visiting America, a 24-year-old girl asked me if Australians speak English. Oh, frig's sake, do I have one for this? Enter 17-year-old me, working at McDonald's, and generally hating life, but for different reasons than I do these days. By this point in my illustrious McEV's career, I was the only person other than management qualified to train new hires, and since it was a McDonald's, I obviously got stuck with it. All well and good, until I get stuck with someone so freaking stupid that it quite possibly gave me my first real thought of how are you still alive. Training this guy on the drive-through window. Easy enough, look at the screen. Track treats. Then walk over to the front of the line and get the food that's on the screen. I've already had issues with this guy, and I'm busy trying to hold the front counter area somewhat together, when I hear from behind me in what can only be described as a perfect Tyrone Biggums impersonation. Except it wasn't. This guy actually talked this way. Hey, what's that mean? Me. What's what mean? That. What's that? What's what milk? This incredible genius of the ages is pointing at the screen, completely clueless as to what milk is. You know the little milk containers that come in Happy Meals? The one that was in a clear Fricine cooler right by the window? Yeah, that one. I don't miss that job at all. I asked a friend, who had tire wear issues, if she's ever rotated them, and she goes, don't they rotate when I drive it? Not me, but it's such a dumb question I have to share. A classmate of mine in my sophomore year of high school asked my biology teacher something so dumb it stuck with me for 10 years. She was clearly arguing with someone in the back of the class and my teacher finally stopped them and asked what was going on. Now this girl was known to everyone as a bit of a dunce, but this was astounding. She looked at my teacher with a smug ass smirk and said, "Can you settle this argument for us? Since you're a science teacher, a biologist doesn't study biology, right? These guys keep trying to tell me they do." My teacher went wide-eyed and had to leave the room for what felt like 5 minutes. This girl already said a lot of really stupid stuff in the 6 years I went to school with her, but this was the one that always stuck out to me. When I was working at second level at support, I reset a user's password to start 123. I told her, "Your temporary password is start 123 with a capital S. I was asked, "How do you make a capital S?" Definitely was Assyria, in a discussion of the country. It was me. I'm white. Ended up dating a long-time friend of mine, who is black. We were talking about going to the beach the next day, and I mentioned that I needed to buy some sunscreen. GF tells me she has some, so no worries. I asked her why she had sunscreen. She was puzzled for a moment. She then responded, "Yes, black people get sunburned. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't happen." And she was right. I just assumed, in all my whiteness, that black people didn't sunburn. She still makes fun of me for this. I'm in my 30s. Did your grandpa ever have any kids? Me, in a moment of shock when seeing a woman I had known 25 years earlier. "Do you know who you are?" Obviously meant to say, "Do you know who I am?" I work in a toll booth, and was working on the westbound side. A lady drove up to my booth really mad, which is part of the course, but I digress. She told me that every day she takes this route home from work, and every day, the sun is already in her eyes. Well, of course, she's living westbound at 6 p.m. When I mentioned this, she brushed it off and asked, "Well, can't you change the direction of the road, or at least put a cover over it? I can't be the only person who is bothered by this." And student exam. Which questions do I answer? I used to work at a sub shop and a lady asked me how much bigger is the 8-inch compared to the 6-inch. I replied with 2 inches. That was that. It wasn't directed towards me, but I figured it belonged to. I was in a park, sitting on a bench just enjoying the nice weather. I see a mom walk away from her baby, who was in a stroller. I see a crackhead walk up to the baby. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there. All the crackhead did, however, was ask the baby if he had any crack. I figured I should put it in. I had a friend ask me why they aired the 10th anniversary memorial of 9/11 on the internet. I asked him what he meant and he replied, "Why wouldn't they air it on the day it happened?" I again asked him WTF he was talking about. Again he responded, "Well, 9/11 happened on the 1st of September, didn't it? The dumbest forgot what day 9/11 happened on." To this day, if I ever look down at my phone and see that the time is 9/11, I text it, "Never forget." I was an artillery crew member in the army. For 2 weeks I was on a detail to fire the solid howitzer in the morning at 630 am, and in the afternoon at 500 p.m. to signal the raising and lowering of the flag so everyone on base knew to turn and salute towards the flag. The solid howitzer was the vintage WW2 howitzer in front of Division HQ at Fort Bliss, TX. There was no projectile in the howitzer, just the powder to make the boom. One day after we fired the salute, one of the guys on the flag raising detail came over and asked us where the shell lands. We fired the howitzer south, in the direction of the El Paso International Airport, the city of El Paso, and Mexico. This guy honestly thought that we were firing an artillery shell 2 times a day through the landing pattern of a busy airport into the suburbs of a moderately sized city. He was also in our unit. He should have known better. The only response we gave him was the Forrest Whitaker eye. How many members are in the Elite Four? A woman asked me if Gorilla Glue was made from real gorillas. I laughed at first, but she was serious. She told me she was vegan and wouldn't use the product if it was made with real gorillas. My wife asked me why the lightning was red. I replied, "Honey, those are fireworks." I worked at a cafe with steakhouse, crisp white china mugs. A woman ordered a dark roast coffee and a green tea to stay, and then when I slid up to her she looked straight and then back at me with big Bambi eyes. Which is which? When scheduling an appointment for someone I asked if they could come at noon. They asked me what time noon was. The homecoming queen at my high school asked me if the Native Americans really existed. And off in our 3-month review. How do I skip forward? We were watching a live stream on Yahoo. I was at my cottage looking at the stars at night with a friend, and she turned to me and asked, "Are there countries in the sky?" I didn't know what she meant, so I asked her to explain, and then she said, "Well, are there any countries in the world that are just kind of in the sky?" I was so confused that I just sat there in silence, but eventually she says, "I mean, is there land on the earth in the sky where people live at our countries?" At that point I just gave up and said no, and she replied, "Oh, okay," so reassuringly. I'm a whitewater raft guide. One of my customers asked me why they put rocks in the river if they are so dangerous. If crackers had bones, it was me. I asked that. While eating a chicken pot pie, my friend asked me why they didn't make pies with fruit in them instead, like regular ass pies. Tragicity. How am I supposed to fry this egg? Every time I crack one into the fryer, it just turns into ribbons. This was at my first kitchen job, and obviously the skies. To edit. Okay. So to turn an egg into ribbons, you crack it directly into a deep fryer. The result is inedible. It's like a spider web. This kid had no idea that you fry an egg on the flat grill, which killed me, because he was always going on about what a great cook he was. The place we were working at had this great program, where they would hire people with no kitchen experience, and then not train them. Sadly, this was not my only kitchen job where I got stuck teaching coddled children how to crack an egg. My wife and I were watching The Martian and she looked over at me and asked if it was based on a true story. My daughter, honors class in geography, biology and chemistry, asked me while standing on her own ocean, "Is this all salt water?" I didn't answer, just looked at her. Grandmother once was doing a crossword puzzle, turns to me and asks, "What is Edgar Allan Poe's middle name?" She asked so earnestly that it made me think that Edgar Allan Poe had another middle name. After I haltingly replied Allan, she realized she had answered her own question. We still bring it up occasionally. I live in Texas. I was on vacation in Hilton Head, SC. Someone asked me where everyone kept their horses while we were at school. In 8th grade, a friend of mine asked me if black people's cum was different. Like, he thought their jizz would be black or something. She brings me a map of Spain, tells me she isn't good at geography, and asks if I can point out where she's going on holiday, booked by boyfriend. Okay, sure. Where? I ask. Southern Spain. Okay, but where exactly? Southern Spain. I pointed vaguely at the bottom of the map and she went away quite happily. Thing is, she's reasonably intelligent, but that question really showed the gaping hole in her knowledge and understanding. I worked in a sub shop for many years. I had a guy look at me and ask me how big a 12-inch sub is. I just looked at him and said 12 inches. He just nodded and said okay, like I had just imparted some new and secret knowledge on him. Context: I grew up in China. Canadian lady, Sue, are there roads in China? Or do you have to take the Great Wall to school? Me, Great Wall. On my pet panda. Knew it. Worked at a bank in Walmart. Standing under bank sign that was a foot high and 4 feet across. Wearing a polo with big bank logo. Woman comes up and asks me to process her return of a loaf of bread. Pretty
Slow
much
down there. You know, son.
how tax brackets work and they think that getting a larger salary will hurt them financially. When I was a kid, I asked my dad for a tuna fish sandwich without the tuna fish. He handed me 2 pieces of bread. To this day, I've never seen him laugh harder than he did the first time he told me this story. He said I was about 4. Aren't Mexicans and Indians from India the same thing? Asked by a girl at a bonfire. I'm half Mexican. Probably happens with a lot of people too. Just recently while I was shopping for sneakers, I asked the salesperson for a size 12. He nodded, came back with a shoe and said, "We don't have a size 12 anymore. Can you try on a size 9 instead?" Point to the moon on this map. She was happy she won the argument as I could in fact not point at the moon on a map of the Earth. I was asked how far the luggage plane usually flies behind the passenger plane. The person who asked me went to an Ivy League medical school. Do macadamia cookies have nuts in them? Me, macadamia nuts. What really? That's what macadamia is. Then there was also, do the peanut butter cookies have nuts in them, like other nuts? Cause like, peanut butter isn't a nut anymore. Now, cause they made it all soft. The idiot in question that I work with is an 18-year-old girl that serves these desserts. I've also had other situations with this girl before. I was once talking to another co-worker about different cheeses for some unknown reason. Co-worker mentions goat cheese. Idiot girl overhears this and says, "Goats make cheese." I said, "Yeah, they produce milk. So you can make goat cheese. They have milk." I thought that was only cows. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.
Keep rising to the top. Give me what you got.
What is the stupidest thing you've ever heard someone say? Some girl once told me that it was impossible for me to be Vietnamese. BC Vietnam was a war, and not a country. This happened while in college SMH. I used to work in a grocery store and this elderly woman said, 25 cents a pound.
Put that
I
shit
can
on.
get them 4 pounds for $1 at Safeway. This girl in my history class, in like 8th grade, turned to me, asked me, "Aren't Jews and Nazis the same thing?" I was speechless. Me, this is a male Yorkshire pig. He weighs. Dumbus. Excuse me. That's clearly a female. She has nipples. A former co-worker of mine asked me what language they spoke in England before we took a trip to London. We are from Seattle. One day my sister was riding in my convertible. She wore a tank top, since it was 102 degrees outside. We drove 2 counties over and back running errands. At the end of the day she called me, and couldn't understand how she got sunburned when the car was moving.
Shit.
Overheard a guy in class argue that not all triangles have 3 sides. I had a kid seriously get confused when I told him I wasn't one of the 7 dwarfs. And he told me, but there's only 7. I had to break the news that there are far more than 7 people with dwarfism in the world. And this kid wasn't like 9 or something. That would be
See you there.
understandable. He was 14.
What's up, big fella?
Kazakhstan's not a real place. It was made up before. Everyone knows that. Dumbers. My cousin who I had several other family members, most of whom are the country which borders Kazakhstan, showed him a globe to prove it's real.
Didn't see you
I only
there.
use the King James Bible, because that's what Jesus used. Rupert once said MLK freed the slaves, and I didn't even know what to say to that. I'm trying not to eat anything made with white flour, so I can't eat rice. What? Also, in college my then girlfriend had someone in a class ask the professor what plant salt came from.
Never should have
Well, my
come
sister
here.
Meg called me Meg
No,
once,
bro.
and my brother asked me seriously if milk was a fruit or a vegetable. I never buy that. Chinese brand. My pappy was a patriot and fought in WW2nd. Give that.
You too,
Japanese
Nash?
brand. Instead.
So y'all just gonna go out like this. I can't. It said today, motherfuckers is missing and killed and everything else.
There
Y'all
is
just
no
gonna attack.
biological difference between males and females. I'm a
Bullshit,
vegetarian
you
while
hoe.
she was eating chicken nuggets. The fork is the devil's utensil because it is an amalgamation of the feminine spoon and the masculine fork. I know a male lesbian when I see one. My grandmother. We still have no idea what the hell she meant. Guy came into work the other day. I'm a retail manager. And he was talking to another guy in line. And he was telling him that had Clinton won this election, we'd all be in concentration camps right now. Every US citizen. Off the top of my head, I'd say that. A friend of mine told me about this yesterday. Some friends dropped off some pomelo-flavored candies at his workplace, and he absently popped one in his mouth. A second later, enraged, he started shouting, Alright, who's eating pomelo? Because he smelled the pomelo now, but hadn't realized that, in fact, he was the one eating pomelo. I don't know if I should put Latin or Caucasian on the center. My family is from Italy, and Rome is the capital of Latin America. Also, President Benjamin Franklin, like the monster, the guy who invented electricity. No, it's a choice they made to be that way. No one is. Heavy air quotes African American, end quote. I had a German Shepherd doggy, R.I.P.P.D. A friend of a friend once asked if my dog is part canine. I said yes. Oh man. Yep. Them canines are good dogs. As we buried our 20-year-old cat, I said a few prayers and went around the family, and my daughter's ex-boyfriend, who ran the cat over and killed her, said have fun. WTF. How does someone know your age by looking at your license? I heard someone say that Japan was the capital of China. One of my old friends, on more than one occasion, posited that if you got in a plane and flew against the rotation of the Earth, that you'd go back in time. He did not understand time zones. Started to get serious with a boyfriend. We're laying in bed watching a nature documentary, which was talking about Komodo dragons. Proceeded to point out that they look so different than the other types of dragons. My boyfriend, I, at 25 years of age, actually thought dragons were real, and just a type of dinosaur. A girl I knew thought cheese grew out of the ground, as in like on a bush, a cheese bush. WTF. At the end of the tunnel, a woman looked across the Firth of Forth at a large transmission tower, namely the Craig Kelly transmitter. Is that the evil tower? How long does it take to drive to Hawaii? You're depressed? Just be happy though. I once overheard some women talking about books being selected for their kids' project at school, and this gem presented itself. Everyone talks about how Night by Elie Wiesel is just so great and stuff, but I just don't know. It doesn't seem Christian enough. Gee, Becky, why do you think that is? Knew a person that once asked if the movie The Martian was actually filmed on Mars. My mom loudly argued in a crowded hotel elevator that the airmen who checked in ahead of us were plumbers. I pointed out that they all had regulation haircuts and white bags with their force patches, but she insisted, no, they're plumbers. I heard them tell the receptionist they were here in Vegas to lay pipe. While in Chicago, talking to a native, then where are you from? The England. Then what language do they speak there? Your English is very good. Also New York who have the most bizarre insults, including, you Chinese herbal remedy, you Afghan hound, you GD master. He honestly thought these were insulting, and could say them with such vehemence. He also thought the bounty hunter from Return of the GD was called Budapest. The guy was legitimately the stupidest person I've ever met, though I suppose it at least explains why the Sarlacc was always Hungary. There was this girl at my 11th grade math class that was nice, but one day we were talking to the teacher about career choice, and she went, I have to do something that doesn't involve math. I hate math. The teacher goes, but don't you want to be some sort of STEM job? I don't remember what exactly. That's all math. The girl considers this and goes, oh, well, I'll just be an anesthesiologist. They make really good money. The teacher is stone-faced and says, that's all based on proportions. You'll kill somebody. The earth is flat. Sandy Hook wasn't real. It was just the government trying to push gun control. It was the last time I ever spoke to that person. I once heard someone ask if Puerto Ricans were black and Mexicans mixed law. In not PR, but it caused me to feel exhausted. At my high school graduation, in number 225 out of 227. That means there are 7 people stupider than me. Sure, Carol. That's totally what it meant. Yeah, Christopher Columbus, the guy who discovered Earth. I was listening to a 10-year-old kid and his group of friends at a Burger King talking about solving global warming. I don't get global warming. Why don't they just move Mars? He continued with his theory for a minute. He thought global warming was due to Mars emitting heat, and that we had the ability to move planets away from Earth if they got